Views expressed by CamaPlan podcast guests may not reflect those of CamaPlan. CamaPlan does not guarantee the accuracy of information provided by guests, nor does it endorse or recommend any individual or organization. CamaPlan is not an investment advisor, CPA, realtor, or attorney. You are encouraged to conduct your own due diligence before making investment choices. For any tax, legal, accounting, investment, or other questions, please consult a specialist. Hi, I'm Michael Duncan, and welcome back to The Road to Financial Freedom. This podcast is brought to you by CamaPlan, a self-directed IRA administrator focused on educating investors on how to grow retirement savings faster through alternative investments. In each episode, we're going to take an in-depth look at the many roads taken to financial freedom and how they differ for each of our guests. Our goal is to help the listeners learn how they can achieve their own financial freedom through the experience and stories of experts that have done just that. Today's guest is a real estate professional in Florida who has done hundreds of deals and is committed to bringing value to his clients by helping them navigate the complex process of buying or selling real estate. He purchases rental properties to create passive income and looks to help his students succeed in turning a hustle into a business. I am very excited to welcome David Pupo to the show today. David, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks a lot for inviting me, my man. And hopefully everything is going well with you. I know we were talking about a little bit earlier, some crazy commotions got you on a Wednesday morning, but hopefully everything's been able to settle down.
Yes, more often than not, a very quiet town. Had some excitement with some SWAT teams this morning. Thankfully, no one was hurt. Not going to get into any more details than that. But I'm thrilled to talk to you. I've been looking forward to this conversation, and I just kind of want to get right into it. And I would love to ask, I guess, what brought you to this point? How did you get here? How did this become your everyday life?
Right. So I actually grew up with a lot of real estate professionals in my family. My mom owned a title company. My aunt was a real estate agent. And then we had relatives that were in like the mortgage lending process. And then you start seeing, 2005, 6, 7 hit. And then obviously in a place like South Florida where I grew up, the rug was pulled from underneath everybody, right? I think it was one of the most impacted areas that there was when the recession hit because of all that bad debt. So for a while, I never thought I even want to be in real estate because it affected my family so much that way. So I go to college. I went up here to Orlando to the University of Central Florida and studied finance and actually marketing. So like, once again, I knew I always wanted to do something with investments. And it was something very deep in me. Why? I don't know. It's just always been something I wanted to do a lot. I was being able to, like 17, 18, start doing stuff with like index funds and just start getting my world into the finance world, in the stock market. But so I go through there, did really well with being able to go through UCF, started applying for positions in the investment world. And I wasn't being able to get that much success, to be honest. So I landed a job with a recruiting company. The company was focused on being able to locate engineers throughout the entire nation. Here in Orlando, there's a lot of defensive contractors, your Lockheeds, your Northrops, all those kind of big companies. They have a lot of hubs here in Orlando. And so we were working with, and while it was a pretty cool job, I just didn't have any passion for it.
Yeah.
And so suddenly I'm starting to see the value of how much time I'm putting into something and how much I'm getting out of it. Right. I'm working like crazy hours there, 60 hours a week. And I felt like I wasn't really making a lot for how much money for how much time I was putting in. Right. And then you have that just that time of like, there has to be a better way. Right. Because at that time I'm coming home, I'm burnt out. I'm pretty much a couch potato. Like I just got home and I just want to sit down on the couch and just like veg out for the rest of the night. And that wasn't who I was. And luckily enough, my now wife, but girlfriend at the time, was saying like, you look miserable. Like, why are you doing this? And it's because I said, I don't know what else to really do. And, we were dating in college and she was like, well, you always want to do something with investing. Have you looked in some other positions again? I go, no, I haven't looked a whole bunch. And I started going on and I just found something with bigger pockets, just scrolling and finding bigger pockets, which is a huge podcast for real estate investment. And I was like, okay, well, let me start listening to that. And I was hooked. I started learning the world of investments, but in real estate, something I had never thought of, which is the largest investment that there is here in our world, right? This is a worldwide thing. And I had never given that consideration. So I'm listening to it when I go to the gym. I'm listening to it when I go on walks. I'm listening to it when I'm in the car. And I just I just put that IV in my arm and I just consumed it all. And then I realized that was what I wanted to be able to do. I found people that were doing real estate wholesaling. And I mean, sometimes they'd be making like $20,000, $30,000 on deals, and they would only have to put in a few hours of work. And I was like, okay, so that thought I had earlier, there has to be a better way. This seems like maybe that better way. So I put in my notice at the recruitment company, and I went all in. I joined a brokerage here in Orlando. I saved up about 3 months of expenses, and I just got to work. And it was something that just lit a fire inside of me. And I was so excited to be able to be in something I was being able to make actual traction at, right? I was being able to get a couple of deals here and there with the brokerage. And then I decided to go out on my own for it. And it's something I've loved ever since.
It's incredible how finding something that you can be passionate about can take you from that situation where you come home from work and you don't do anything, being a couch potato. And then all of a sudden, I'm sure there were days where you'd come home from work excited to go back to work. Obviously not doing the regular job, but doing the thing that you actually had a passion for doing. And I can tell just by your voice and by seeing your face, the difference in what that made in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so exciting to be able to just say that, but it's more that I was willing to take that risk, right? Yeah. I was willing to push myself into a situation I had no idea of. And it's something I've told a lot of my students. You got to be, you can fear the unknown, but you can't be afraid to take those first couple of steps. You're not going to know the entire puzzle. It's puzzle pieces. Every single day is like that. I don't care what people say, unless you're probably somebody like Warren Buffett, who's been in the market for so long that they've probably seen about everything. There's always pieces of a puzzle being put together.
So how long did it take exactly until this did become your everyday, your job, your main source of income?
Yeah. So what I was saying is when I quit that job, I went full time into it. So I went from something that was a salaried position into something completely 1099. That took, like I said, I put in a 2 weeks notice, saved up about 3 months of expenses. And I said, well, if it doesn't work after 3 months, I can go get another job, or let me see if I can make this work. And that was in 2016. So
it seems like it worked then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like that. I guess a better way to phrase that question would have been, at what point did you know that it was working? Like, obviously, eventually, like by now you figured it out, but how long did it take before, it really did support your lifestyle and you were like, I don't ever need to think about getting another job again?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the realization was when you cash your first check or you get that first wire hit. You're working like I said, you're working in fog right now. You're spinning, you're putting a lot of hustle into something. And then suddenly you cash a check. And when you cash a check, something happens in your head. And what your head and your mind is showing you very simply is, this can work.
Yeah.
Right. When you have that epiphany of this can work, I dove in even that much further into it. Now, I will say, of course, there's learning curves, right? I would say that one of my biggest hurdles in the beginning is that I do suffer from ADHD, and real estate, I realized, was Alice in Wonderland. You go into this hole and you open out and there's a whole different world that you never knew. And so I'm chasing all of these different things in the beginning. And I mean, what I would say is that you need a couple of years to be able to get it going, right? My first year, I was making a lot less than a lot of my friends that were coming out of college, a lot less. I didn't live near them. I was still driving the car out of college that I had, and I was pinching pennies. But I was willing to keep my head down and be able to stay consistent with it. Year two was still a pretty big struggle. And then suddenly those skill sets start really making their way into your life, where you don't have to crazy make the amount of calls because you now are much more effective on the phones.
Yeah.
Right. So you start having those kind of aha moments.
As someone who suffers from ADHD myself, I can absolutely understand the struggles you probably went through becoming working for yourself, going from a very structured type of position and job. And, it gets to the point where, okay, now you are the only one holding yourself accountable in a lot of ways. And as I'm sure you know, and I'm speaking more to the audience, that is something that can be very, very difficult for people who struggle with ADHD. It's just a tough, the brain isn't wired the same way as a neurotypical brain is. And that just makes things that a lot of people kind of take for granted as very simple tasks, or being able to make a phone call just because you have to. That's something that ADHD brains have a much harder time with. So a lot of respect to you. I just wanted to take a second and focus on that because I think that's incredible. And I enjoyed hearing that you've been able to have that success even while dealing with that. So
thanks. And you build new habits and new disciplines, man. That's it. There's a way almost around everything. You just got to figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the most interesting, as I was diagnosed with ADHD as an adult. One of the most interesting things that I had read about was the idea of, there's this wall that exists in front of you of like things you have to do. And it's more than anything else, it's more about just finding your way around the wall. Like instead of trying to bash through the wall, it's going around, going up, digging a hole under. It's just funny the way you kind of have to make your mind work to accomplish things that you think you shouldn't have an issue accomplishing. But again, that's what it is. That's what a neurodivergent brain has to deal with. But so speaking of habits, and you've also mentioned that you've done a decent amount of coaching. How did that start?
Well, I was able to be with one of the local nonprofit like real estate investment organizations for a while. That was also one of the very big, I would say, ahas, is that I was starting to build a really good team. I was starting to know a lot of local people that ran title companies, that were CPAs, were attorneys, were buyers, were sellers, were lenders, and then that team started really formulating. And so that was one of those bigger aha moments. And as I was growing within, the Orlando, Central Florida market is when people started asking me, well, like how to help them out. And for a long time, I didn't charge. I would just help people out with a couple of things here and there. And then people started asking me to like essentially guide them to start getting their first couple of deals done. And that's when I started realizing, well, I'm like, now you're asking for a lot. And I mean, if you're going to ask for my time like that, then, there has to be a compensation about that. But from being able to do that, we're now being able to impact people's lives in a great way. And I wasn't too sure if I was going to be like somebody that really enjoyed being a coach or not. And I think the inner like athlete of me that grew up with coaches, started slowly realizing, okay, how to do this. Like you were coached literally for freaking 20 years. You know what I mean? And you can do this for people. You have the skill set. Now just coach them.
That's funny. I feel like any coach that I've ever, or anyone that I've ever spoken to that has been involved with coaching, it really does come one of two ways. It's either like, I've always known that this is something I want to do, or they almost fall into it accidentally and they're just not even sure that that's what they want to do, which is clearly the direction that you came at it from. But it's clear that you had a passion for it. I mean, starting with that nonprofit early on, again, it's like you knew that you had these skills. You just didn't necessarily know that it would become such a large part of your life, I'm guessing.
Yeah, man. Never underestimate the value of going out to networking events, picking up a book, finishing that book, applying some stuff like from that book, and just rinse and repeating those kind of processes. Because when I first started, and now where I'm at, it's sometimes you just you look up and wow, you've taken a lot of consistent action, man. You just have that kind of aha moment, right? There was many times where I dreamt of the position that I am now in, and I'm blessed to even be able to have that reflection. Because I think sometimes we get so I'll be happy when situation happens.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I often take some time to meditate and take some time to pray. And that's where my reflection comes in. And I'm very happy about where I'm at in life, but that doesn't certainly mean that I'm stopping here.
Yeah. And I think that makes total sense. And that is awesome. And I'm sure that's something that is important for you to portray to your students.
Yeah.
So speaking of those students, what type of habits and, what do you talk to them about? What outside of, just kind of guiding them through a general, here's how to do A, B, and C in a deal. What are the kind of more intensive things that you're talking to them about? Things that might maybe that you didn't learn doing real estate, or that they might be able to take out of real estate?
Right. One of the biggest ones is accountability. If you want to pay for my time to teach you something, you got to hold yourself accountable. What's the point? Literally, what's the point? You're not going to, you might, you keep all the videos. That's completely fine with me. But if you're paying for my time, and I'll say my time isn't cheap. Like, I want to be able to help you out, but you got to hold yourself accountable for our weekly calls. We also have something called our KPI sheet, which is a key performance indicators, right? So I want to be able to see every week what's going on with your KPI sheet. Are you making progress? Because there's only two things I'm going to really be able to quickly understand. This is just by having students and then running it my own. Are you doing a lot with lead generation? And with that leads, are you converting on those leads, right? Yeah. So I think that's one of those mechanisms that I have to instill in people very quickly, is understanding the KPI sheet is to hold the accountability of those two levers. Get the leads, and then how are you doing with converting those leads? Because if you're not getting leads, I can't help you convert what's not there. There is no such thing as conversion of nothing, right?
It's funny. I had a bit of a flashback to elementary school, actually, as you were talking about the accountability aspect of it. And that'll make more sense in a second. But I'm a musician. I went to school for music, and I play the trumpet starting in 4th grade, like most people do when they start an instrument. And I started taking private lessons not too long after that. And I was not good about practicing. I was very bad about practicing. And the conversation that you seem to have with your students is something that I believe that my private teacher was having with me, which is, if you don't practice, what's the point of you coming here? Because all we're going to do is just walk through what I assigned you last week that hasn't gotten any better. You need to practice it. You need to get better at it so we can fix the mistakes you're making along the way. If you're not making the mistakes, I don't know what to fix.
Bingo. You hit it right on the head. You hit it right on the head on the making mistakes part. What holds a lot of people back is thinking that they're going to get it right the first time. And I can't tell you, I don't know where that got instilled in our society, where somebody had to be perfect at something they know nothing about. But somehow it's there. And it's sad. It's very sad because you're seeing a lot of people that are very talented, but they're afraid. They're afraid to make mistakes. And the people that get the success are understanding that you have to lean into some of these mistakes. I mean, heck, I'm in the process of renovating 4 units on a quadruplex, and there's plenty of mistakes that have been made. Whether it was on my part, whether it was on the property management part, whether it's been on the GC part, mistakes are going to happen. Nothing, you're not God. Nothing is perfect in this world. And I think for some reason we have this idea that we're going to jump in, we're going to ace it, and we're going to make 7 figures. Like, there's a lot in between that. And I hope people understand that you got to be able to, understand that the coach is going to, think about it like being in a forest. This is the best way to really put it. There's probably a lot of, trees, bushes, wild animals. And that's why you go to a coach. Because you're like, wow, that forest looks very overwhelming. But we as the coaches know what's on the other side of that forest, right? We understand that there is now the river, or there is the oasis. But the thing is that they have a hard time seeing what the oasis is, or the river on the other side of that forest, because they don't know how to get through that track, right? So you want the coach to be able to get you through that forest. But the thing is, you got to take the steps.
Yeah. The
coach can't pull you through a forest. It's not going to happen. You got to be willing to have that machete out, cut some limbs. You're going to trip on a couple of, branches, get back up. You got to understand that what's on the other side of this. And what I like to be able to say is, you are learning skill sets. and skill sets are never perfect the first time. You didn't just wake up. Like I'm a big basketball person. You didn't just wake up and go 10 for 10 from the free throw line. That's a skill set. You have to develop it. And just like that, that's how I kind of guide these people through that forest.
Yeah, I mean, they can give you a map, they can give you a compass, but at the end of the day, it's up to you to actually follow them and take the steps. I think that's a really awesome analogy. I think it's very true. Something you and I were talking a little bit about beforehand was, just the ability to be okay with not being comfortable.
Yeah.
I think that goes along with this conversation almost perfectly. Just like the ability to be in a situation where you are going to make mistakes. And I'm sure that's something that you have to talk with your students about a lot. And it's something that probably you get a lot of pushback on.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing I've noticed is that they believe that the small things are going to lead to their success. So, for example, like setting up your CRM, your customer relationship management, system right there, right? They believe that the CRM is what is going to be able to make them complete and get them deals. And I usually tell them that is literally the last thing that gets you deals. I will tell you the first thing that gets you deals. You picking up the phone. That's what gets you deals.
Yeah. Yeah. It has to be work. You have to take steps. So going into that process a little bit to get away from the coaching and back into the real estate, something that, you highlight pretty significantly as I was kind of, just on your website looking into things is the triple offer approach. Can you explain to me what that is? Like I'm a 2-year-old.
Yeah. So what the triple offer is really simple. We remove ourselves from just pushing one offer on a seller. I want to be able to understand what is the real motivation of a seller. So what we do is we provide 3 offers. Sometimes, heck, I'll even go 4, but quadruple offer doesn't sound as cool, right?
That's true. Absolutely good marketing choice there. That's where the marketing degree came from.
Yeah,
it's coming into play there.
But more times than not, we do 3 offers. So we provide 3 offers. One that's going to be more cash focused. One that we call our steering wheel offer, which is somewhere closer to the first offer. That could be something like an innovation or maybe an owner financing deal with interest. And then we have a third offer, depending on what they have in terms of equity. Yeah. But I like to be able to find out if we can make a principal only seller finance offer.
So what brought you to that point? See, I'm assuming a lot of guess and check, so to say, but how'd you get there?
I would say it was getting education. I started seeing that there was more than one way to be able to do something. Don't get me wrong, as being somebody who did a lot of wholesaling, which is being able to find a property at a low discount and be able to put a margin on it and sell it to another investor at a higher amount. I've had really great success with wholesaling, but I also understood that there's many other angles that I could take an approach with a seller. And heck, I kicked myself on some of the deals where I just sold it for a wholesale price when I could have negotiated, I think, seller financing for something like that. So seller financing came up. Really, it's been a perfect time to do it with what's happened, since about March of 2022. Yeah. And as it's been progressing, we are now seeing literally banks collapse on themselves right now. And with that being said, why not be able to use the seller as the bank as opposed to go to Silicon Valley Bank?
No, that makes a ton of sense. And it is interesting with everything going on right now. Obviously, with this podcast, I speak to a lot of people that, their world revolves around investing. That's the point of this. And there's a lot going on, a bunch of it over my head for sure. But are you at all worried, I guess, about the future of the industry is probably the wrong way to put it. But just the general consistency and the safety of what you're doing?
I wouldn't necessarily say the safety. I would say what are the macro storms that are happening right now is more my concern. It's not necessarily with the structuring of deals that we come up with, but I mean, there's so many crazy things going on right now, right? I mean, yeah. it just shows that there's a straw that's about to break the camel's back. Like, it's just, there's too many crazy things happening right now with how high prices are still going up and people simply don't have the money.
Yeah.
I was reading a couple of different like articles, and one of the articles brought up something crazy, and it was that we haven't seen this amount of credit card debt since about 2007, 2008, where people are starting to put a lot more stuff on credit, and that's a very big like, uh-oh, people
Yep.
can't afford normal stuff anymore. I mean, heck, we just went through a crazy gas phase where gas was $4 to $5 a gallon, depending on
I
where you
remember.
live. And recently we were just dealing with $10 dozen of eggs,
Yeah.
a carton of eggs.
Yep.
It's just crazy. Like I said, there's just so many macro things going, and now the Fed doesn't even know what to do. Right? They just came out with a release statement that they were going to increase the rates again, and then you had two of the three biggest bank implosions happen within 3 days of each other. This is crazy times, man. There's a lot of similar things, but there's a lot of unknown things on what is happening right now.
Yeah, I feel like the number one way to worry just about anyone, even someone that was 10 years old, 12 years old when it was all going down, is just to bring up anything resembling 2007, 2008.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's worse than a scary story, I feel like, as an adult.
Yeah.
But to get off that sad and harrowing topic, to maybe get into a more lighthearted one, hopefully. But something I love to ask my guests about is, I believe that you do a lot more learning through making mistakes. And it sounds like you absolutely agree. You learn more when you fail than when you succeed. So I was wondering if you had a time in particular that you learned a lot, not through succeeding, but through failing.
Yeah. Yeah. So a really big thing I just went through is I actually have a partner in the business. I was the visionary and he was the integrator. And I think what I got to realize is the leadership that I had to be able to take on, I wasn't prepared for. And honestly, what the partnership that we had, I also realized there's a lot of things after we split up. I thought I had to rely on him for a lot more than I actually had to. I started realizing there was this who, not how philosophy. And what I mean by that for your audience is that who can I get to be able to do this task, as opposed to thinking to myself, how can I do this task? Can you necessarily do all the tasks? Yeah, you can, but you're going to get yourself very swamped very quickly.
Yeah.
As opposed to thinking, who can I delegate this to? And that started putting once again, earlier from my conversation, with those pieces to a puzzle, right? So then I was starting to understand how to be able to put certain employees in certain positions and be able to take over tasks. And I'll tell you, the only way that you learn something like that is from crazy adversity, because when the partner left the company, he left me in a stack of debt, where I wasn't too sure if this was going to be able to make it through. And that was something that was very hard to chew on, with somebody with me who I thought who was and is a very successful real estate investor. And I just felt like the temple had fallen down, right? But the good news is I took the time to be able to reflect and, well, how do I build it better? Right? Because you only understand how do I build it better when something obviously collapses.
Yeah. It's very hard to, when something's working, there's not a lot of reason to change it.
Yeah.
The biggest change is often fueled by, change. So that's very interesting. And it sounds like you learned a lot. It also sounds like you're in a better place now, in terms of the business anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had the luxury of being able to honestly turn in the office keys just a few weeks ago for the office that we had for 3 years, because quite frankly, I was the only one going in there. Most of my team is now virtual. And I mean, I was just paying for me to go in there, and I have an office at home. So it was like, what's the point in this, right?
Absolutely.
So got to save myself a lot of money with that. And because I was able to leverage a lot of virtual talent.
That's incredible. So real quick, before I let you plug yourself and tell the listeners where they can find you, I have one final question, and it's simply, what does financial freedom mean to you and why?
Financial freedom means to me and why. Financial freedom means to me being able to develop a world where like I'm getting into what I believe financial freedom is actually. Me and my wife are now planning those next steps in life. We want to be able to have children. We've been able to do some renovations to a property that was actually something that we bought together. And the financial freedom came to me in the first way of if we're blessed enough to be able to have a child, when that time comes, I could take off the time that I want to be able to get experiences I will never be able to get back. And I think that's what financial freedom means to me, more now than ever, is being able to understand I can now exchange leveraged time and money together. So how do I get enough passive income or enough properties, or be able to put my business on automation where I can now take back a lot of that time? And if we do, like I said, if we're lucky enough to be able to be blessed with children, we get to have that time with them, and we don't have to worry about money in that time frame.
Incredibly well put. Thank you for that. And finally, please tell the listeners where they can find you, whether that be Instagram, TikTok, whatever. Please feel free to plug yourself.
Sure. So you can find me at tripleoffer.com. We just created a Facebook page called Triple Offer Tribe, where we are coming out with a lot of free content. I'm very excited to be able to create that. I used to have a limiting belief in myself, honestly. And could I be somebody that ran a really good Facebook page? And then once I did it, I'm like, I'm going to run circles around people on this, right? So we're being able to bring a lot of content through Facebook. Instagram, you can find me as Dollars with David. That's still the same username. In TikTok is Dollars with David. And then once again, you can find me at tripleoffer.com. And then if it's Facebook, just type in the name. I can guarantee you there's not too many other David Pupos in Florida. There's probably I actually do know the other David Pupo, and he's actually a cousin of mine. He's in Miami.
So worst case scenario, he points them in the right direction.
Yeah.
Either way, they'll find their way to you. And your info will also be in the description of this episode. So David, on behalf of CamaPlan and on behalf of myself, thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed talking to you today. And as always, thanks for listening to The Road to Financial Freedom. If you enjoyed the show, please support the podcast by remembering to rate, review, and subscribe. You can keep up to date with us on Facebook or Instagram at Road to Financial Freedom Podcast. Thanks again, and I will see you next time. If you like what you're hearing on The Road to Financial Freedom and want to learn more about self-directed IRAs and 401ks, click the link in the description to download a free toolkit with everything you need to get started.